the mindset first has to be, I am forever a student, right? I like the people that are like tinkers. They're always optimizing. They're the engineer, they're the mechanic. They're like always trying to figure out, how can I make something better? Think about that in your life. I'm gonna be a forever student with my friends. I'm a forever student with the game of golf. I'm a forever student with my job. But all these things have the ability for you to educate yourself to become better. And if the biggest goal for me is to help you guys become better at anything that you're trying to do, then you need to adopt the mindset that I need to make education a priority forever. All right, what's up, everybody? Episode 41 of Pursuit of Balance. We're going to talk about all things education today. We're going to talk about self-education, mentorships, coaching, the importance of these things, where I think formal education has unfortunately failed us, where I also think education is possibly going in the future. And this kind of stemmed from a conversation a couple weeks ago with a buddy of mine. And, he has a newborn, about 6 months old. And we were talking about, it was honestly a conversation that kind of stemmed from financial planning. Like my financial planner, person I'm working with, was talking like, oh, do you want to put money away for 529 for a college fund for your kid, your son coming? And, the conversation I was having with my buddy, I was like, honestly, it's weird that like, as much as I thought I would be like, okay, I'm definitely going to be putting things away for my kid for college and stuff like that, or, helping them to some degree with what that might be. I'm also like, I don't know where the world goes with the formal education side, right? Because with AI and the disruption that's going to happen from white collar work, how much of a need is that stuff going to be versus like the need for trade schools, maybe for specific trades, obviously, right? But really what I want to kind of focus on the most today is kind of the importance of self-education, because this is something I preach so much to my team. And I think it's so important for all people to understand the power of it, right? Because when I was younger, went through school, public school, got into college, or went to community college for a whopping, I don't know, 2 weeks, 2 months, whatever it was. It wasn't very long. I just didn't want to do general education again. I was paying for it on my own, but I always had this really big insecurity when I was a kid, like around that subject of like, I did good in school. Like I had good grades. I had a 3.85 when I graduated high school. Like I did good, took my AP classes. Like I always felt like I did good in school. But college was, both my parents, I think my mom maybe went to community college, but my dad didn't go to college. So I just kind of grew up in a household where it wasn't like it was talked against, but it wasn't really like, hey, if you want to go, like go do it. But you also want to go, like figure out how to make it work, right? Like if you need to go get a scholarship, you need to be good at sports, you need to be good enough in school to be able to get those kind of things or those grants, whatever it might be. So they were supportive of like, we'll do community college. It's a lot cheaper and affordable if you want to do that, and you can figure out next steps on your own. And no animosity towards that. I have no like feelings towards that at all. But I felt at that time, so that's what, 18 years old when I was in community college, 19, whatever it was. I felt insecure, A, leaving it, and B, I remember the conversations around dinner tables with friends in high school of like, oh, where are you going? And all my friends are going, oh, I'm going to UC Riverside. I'm going to Cal Poly. I'm going to Stanford. I'm doing all these things. And it was always like an insecurity because I was like, fuck, like, am I an idiot, or like, am I going to be fucked for life? Like what's the reality of the future going to look like for me? So it's easy to kind of look at it back now, but when I got into work right away, I started working and I knew that I wanted to be in the gym. Like, so for me, the thing that would made it easy for me to drop out was two things. Number one is like, I didn't want to go through general education again. The idea of like going through your first 2 years of college to re-go through the things that we just went through for the last 12 years, stupid to me. I was like, let's just go right into the minors or the majors. Let's go into the stuff that I care about, right? Like I wanted to get into business. I wanted to get into psychology. I wanted to learn about the body, kinesiology a little bit more and things like that. But I did not want to go through all the other bull crap. And then the second thing, which was obviously the biggest motivator for me, is like I knew that I really was always motivated by the idea of working in a gym. When I started working out, I was like, man, this would be a cool job. So I already had a job in a gym at that time. So it made it easier for me to just make the decision of like, I'm not going to do this. I don't want to do this. I'm not motivated by it. And now that I don't, quote unquote, have to do this, when I was living in my parents' house, obviously I had to go to school. And, at least I think I did. I never had that conversation, I guess. Thought I had to go to school. And I got out, started working, and I started just going through all these certifications. So I started getting certifications in fitness, and then I started going to sales workshops and sales conferences, and then I started going to management things, and then, changing jobs and different level educations there. Then I started doing a lot more like just which I called myself YouTube certified for a while, where I would go through a lot of just like online education, right? Even just the free stuff, not even the stuff I was paying for. And then towards probably right before the pandemic, I would say maybe 2019, 2018, I started getting more into reading physical books outside of just the audibles. Pandemic was like a complete turnaround for me, where I think 2020 I read 52 books just that year. And I've really, I've collected now a freaking library in my room. So like I have hundreds of books probably. And I love reading, and I love the idea of education. Then I started getting into more bigger mentorships, right? A $10,000 mentorship for this, a $5,000 business course for this, right? An in-person this, like, and just learning different things. And I like, we have an education statement for the coaches here at Functional Lifestyles, where it's like at a, tier 3, 4, and 5 coaches, they get $500 a year towards education specific to our jobs, obviously. And it was funny when I was going over like the new year planning and like, okay, we're trying to, as the company grows, I'm trying to make it more of a company, right? I want to make things that make it more appealing for someone to work here and someone to stay here, most importantly. And that's, is that 401k, which we started offering. And then it's like, okay, is that matching more important to you? Is it health insurance is more important to you? Is it education? Is it profit sharing? Is it whatever? And it was interesting because like everyone had education pretty low in the totem pole. But the thing for me that I've always noticed about education, in whatever direction or kind of aspect or avenue it's coming from, is I am always super motivated by the thing that I just finished educating myself on. It's like I went to a business scaling workshop a month ago now at this time, and I came back and I was like, cool. I started working harder on some of these back end things. Okay, this is what I need to do for onboarding. This is what I need to figure out for recruiting. This is what I want to put these curriculums in place for continued education for the coaches and all these things. I think like one of the things that I've always been so strong on why I'm such a big advocate for why people should continue the self-education is because it keeps you motivated by the subject you're reading on. Like if I go read a nutrition book, I'm going to talk about nutrition more so to my clients, right? Or more so to my team. If I go talk about a marketing thing, I'm going to go talk more about marketing to my team. So it's like, because it's a recency bias, like whatever we're learning about or reading about or seeing is what we're talking about, which is exactly why on the other side of it, when the bad side of like things that people don't learn about, but like the news, people are like, oh, I'm learning about all the crap in the world, and this is all I'm talking about. So it's a little bit of a filter on the information that you are digesting. As I'd much rather have somebody be spending time on YouTube learning something versus watching the news. I'd much rather have somebody reading a book, learning something, or fiction if that makes them happier, versus reading a newspaper about all the crap going on. And it's not that you should be blind or oblivious to it. It's just like, hey, like understand what you are taking in is what you are going to talk about. That is your state of mind. That is your state of being. And so like, I bring it back up to the team is like, I'm like, hey, like why I bring this up as such an important thing for me with company culture is because I know the impact it makes on me for my work and my state towards work. So I want that to still be an offering or something that I prioritize more for you guys, because sometimes we don't know what we need. We know what we just think what we want, right? And the things we need are the things that help us move the needle forward in life, right? It's the things that allow us to actually make steps forward in any level of success, depending on what you're working on. And the formal education side for me, I think personally, in my opinion, and I have an opinion without college, but I can just tell you from all the people that all my friends that went to college, all the team that works for me. I was at Equinox. I was the only person that had a placard out of the 41 people that didn't have a college degree. I remember I put self-made university. So I put SMU is my degree. And I will tell you, it's like a lot of us just end up in the same jobs. Like a lot of these big corporations are no longer like, they're reducing the requirement for getting jobs, right? I have so many friends and even people on this team that are still paying off debt. Like they're in their 40s and they're still paying off student loan debt. And that's kind of for me is like, fuck, that's crazy to think about that. Like you can be over half of your life or like, so if I'm 40, 20 years ago, I was in college and I'm still paying that off. And then the thing that's like the weirdest for me is like, you're not even using the degree for what it is, right? And I don't want this episode to be that I think formal education and going to college is wrong, because that is not what I'm trying to get as like an objective here. Because like there's plenty of people that college is a great experience. I think it's a cool place. Most people meet their partners there. Most people meet some of their best lifelong friends there. Most people get the idea to go, or the ability to go play sports or go do something that they were more passionate about. I'm talking more about the formal education system on the education alone, right? So college to me, I don't want to knock any of that down. That's not my goal, even though there's a lot of things that I still think like I would have not changed what I'd done, but like, hey, like that's just my opinion on it. So as time goes on, I think it's important for us to kind of think about of like, okay, us with our jobs with work, us with our jobs at home as a parent, as a husband or wife, us as our jobs as friends. There's a foundation of understanding how these things work. And the biggest mistake I still see people make is they finish whatever formal education they have, and then they never go back to anything else. Like you get out of school at 22, 23, whatever it is, and then you spend the rest of your life not learning much of anything, right? Or maybe you're someone that goes to school and you're a doctor or a lawyer and you have to do the extras and you have to do all the extracurricular to get your degree or become whatever you need to be that role. And then we stop, right? And this is where I see still to this date where so many people that I work with client-wise that just like deal with this level of burnout. And I think burnout comes from a loss of enjoyment and a loss of the process kind of happening of like continuing to grow, right? Because you think, okay, I know enough to get my job done. And the sad reality of it is that's true. Like once I become educated enough to be good at my job, I don't really need to learn more to be making money or to keep my job, right? And I used to always say this, and I still say this to the team a lot, is I worked at so many different gyms where I would be, granted, I was in my 20s at that time when I was working at other gyms, but I would work with 30, 40, 50-year-olds, and they'd be coaches and trainers. Some of them are great. Some of them are like, okay. And the ones that I always thought were okay, I'm like, they just look like they're doing the same shit. Like they're copying, pasting the same workouts. They haven't really evolved their training. They're doing the very traditional stuff. And don't get me wrong, I think there's a really big argument that like really being good at the basics and someone that's really good with the accountability side of what they provide will work better than most people's kind of fluff, right? The sugar-coated fancy looking stuff. My goal is not to just try to like learn stuff to just have new crap to work on and make it look new and pretty and sugar-coated, but it's like there's so many different aspects of a job that make you good that require education, right? Like, do I know how to properly communicate with people, right? In business, do I know how to market myself or my business? Do I know how to sell myself? Do I know how to retain people? Do I know how customer service works? For my job, it's like, do I know how nutrition works? Do I know how movement works? Do I know how exercise working program works? Do I know how to talk about stress management? Do I know how the effects of sleep are? And like kind of the details that make me good at my job are very holistic on some of the education that's required. And the sad reality is most people that I work with, and even on this team, didn't learn a lot of that stuff at school. Like even the masters in kinesiology people that I've worked with, like they have a really, really good, strong grasp on like some of the basics, but they don't have some of the more holistic things that kind of make it work. And even doctors, like this has always been my thing of like the little time that a doctor has to spend in school for nutrition, and this is why I've been kind of more on the stance of like, I think we live in a sick care system, not a healthcare system. And this is also why I've also been on the stance that I think like I'm in a job of healthcare versus the doctor of healthcare, because health is proactive. Health is an act. Health is something you're doing all the time. Sick care is I come to you with the problem. Here is your symptomatic fix towards it, right? My thing with doctors is like if I have a broken bone or like my wife, obviously with us delivering a baby in August, things like that. Yeah, there's going to be times that I need to use doctors. Don't get me wrong. But there's also so many things that you guys can empower yourself to learn on how to prevent these things from happening, right? Like, do I need to rely on a doctor to be happy or healthy, right? Do I need to rely on a therapist or a nutritionist or a trainer? And if there's a degree of motivation or accountability that you don't have, yes, super, super powerful avenues to be able to leverage. But if you feel that I am somebody that's motivated, I just don't understand what or how, that's an education problem. That's a knowledge problem, right? And knowledge and structure is one side of what people need fixing. And then there's motivation and accountability is another side, right? And it's like, if someone lacks structure, that's like, okay, nowadays, especially with AI, and this is kind of where some of my conversation around a couple weeks ago, my buddy was talking about is like, I don't know where those things are going because what we used to go to school to learn, and this is what's interesting with even some of the regulations that are already coming out with AI of like preventing legal advice from happening, preventing medical advice from happening, and like how certain states are pushing that harder than others. And I'm not here to once again argue regulation or not. I think regulation is important for a lot of things, but like if we do have access to accurate information, why are we regulating that or withholding that from people? Because That's for me is some of this little conspiracy brain goes off of like, we want people to have access to the same knowledge, right? Like that provides equality and equity to everybody. It doesn't matter who you are. If you're using a free ChatGPT account or if you're someone that has a doctorate, like if I have access to the same information, I can learn it this like in 2 seconds by just asking the right question. That's equity. That's it. That's what we want. We want everyone to have access to those things. But it really starts with the understanding of why it's such an important thing for people to make that a priority in their life, right? Because for me, like this whole podcast is hopefully to share some of the experiences that I've had in my life or some of my kind of knowledge that I've had towards certain subjects. So hopefully for you guys to take it and take action on it, right? And I'll talk about the action part in a second because I think obviously that's the most important piece. But like the mindset first has to be I am forever a student, right? One of the things I even look at in the hiring process is for people that have like, I like the people that are learners, right? I like the people that are like tinkers. They're always optimizing. They're the engineer. They're the mechanic. They're like always trying to figure out how can I make something better? But instead of thinking about the just in a professional point of view of your job, think about that in your life, right? Like think about that same mindset. I'm a forever student with my relationship with my wife. I'm going to be a forever student with my kid in the future. I'm going to be a forever student with my friends. I'm a forever student with the game of golf. I'm a forever student with my job. But, all these things have the ability for you to educate yourself to become better. And if the biggest goal for me is to help you guys become better at anything that you're trying to do, then you need to adopt the mindset that I need to make education a priority forever. And the reason why I will argue this 100 times over that self-education is 10 times more or 100 times more important than formal education, because self-education is the adoption of the idea that I am going to continually work on self-educating myself, not waiting for my parents to tell me to go to school or college because it's paid for, or my job to do this certification or course just to have a certain position. Not those are the things that I can kind of classify as more formal, right? Like they are needed to maintain a certain status of life or a certain relationship with your boss or a certain relationship with your parents. Self-education is like, am I going to choose to listen to the right podcasts or things that are going to help me learn, right? Am I going to choose to watch the right things with TV or YouTube? Am I going to choose to read the books or, take the certifications or take the workshops? Am I going to choose to pay for the coach, pay for the mentors, pay for the people that are going to allow me to shortcut my life and learn? Because the goal in life is not to go through failures, right? And I this is kind of one of those subjects that I think sometimes, like in my eyes, gets a little bit misunderstood. Like people say, like, well, failures are the best lessons, and I'm like, it's true. I think pain's the best teacher. I think failures are the best lessons. But if I gave you a red pill and a blue pill, for the sake of the Matrix example, and I gave you one life where you can learn from other people, you can learn from other sources on how to prevent the failures from happening and better the chances of more success in your life. Or the other pill where it's like, you just go through it, you go through your formal stuff, and you just learn through failure. I think most people, I would hope so, would take the other side, where it's like, no, I'd rather learn from somebody else, right? And like, you have to self-apply, you have to take action, you have to execute on all these things that you're learning about. And you also, I think, have to be open-minded enough to understand that not everything is true for you, right? And I say that with true for you because I think truth is subjective. And this is a weird thing to kind of think about, but like the idea of what works for me might not work for you. And that can make our truths different, right? If I say this works really well for me in nutrition, or this type of training works really, really well for me, and it doesn't for you, and you did the exact same thing, then our truths are different, right? So when I say what's true for you is like, you need to understand that even through this process of education and taking the lead and taking the perspective that I'm going to continually learn and continually grow and continually better my life through that education, that I also want to stay open-minded through that process, that not everything that I'm hearing, reading, listening to, whatever it is true for me. Because like, there's going to be some things like, okay, I like that, I'm going to apply that. I don't feel like that. That's minoring in the majors or majoring in the minors. I use that statement a lot for the team because a lot of times, I'll give you my industry, we were talking about, what were we talking about? I think this was like a mobility conversation. And there's been a lot of hype in the mobility world around internal rotation and external rotation for your hips and shoulders, right? And I was telling this to the team that like, I think if I had the ability, if someone failed a flexion extension test and someone failed the internal rotation, external rotation test, I would prioritize, as far as what I look at as low hanging fruit, flexion extension. And the answer, and I had some coaches who were like, why? Because I don't think that makes sense. And I'm like, well, here's why, because it has a bigger impact on more things, right? Like the rotation capacity of having enough internal rotation to be good at swinging the golf club, I can still, with that certain degree of internal rotation, be able to squat, be able to deadlift, be able to lunge, be able to do a lot of things. But if I'm missing the ability to flex at the hips, that affects a lot. Like I can't squat as well, I can't deadlift as well, I can't lunge as well, I can't jump as well, I can't run as well. So it has a bigger impact on a lot more things. And that's kind of my framing and perspective of most things in life is what's going to have the most impact on what's like the least amount of information I need to get the most amount done, right? And like I noticed this a lot when I went through nutrition during the pandemic, especially. I took a couple of certifications, most of them more nutrition based. I read a lot of nutrition books, and I realized that I was like, wow, now I know why it's so confusing for people, because these are a lot of these things are kind of just majoring in the minors. And what I mean by that is like we're making small things make a big deal, right? It's like, no, I want the big deal shit. Like I want the things that move the needle, right? But you have to go through that. You have to go through that process of learning what that stuff is. You have to go through that process of actually applying it yourself, to yourself or to the people that you're trying to work on, because just relying and becoming dependent on someone else's opinion. This is why I think one of the biggest things that I see too with just the world in general is sometimes the loss of the ability for critical thinking, right? Like we just hear something, we go, that's the truth, right? That's reality. And it's like, that could be. That could be that. That could be their reality. Could not be your reality, right? Did you actually take the time to take the data in, or do the research, or did you take the time to apply it to yourself for the things you're trying to improve on? Did you take the time to actually critically think of how would this actually work for me? And if you didn't, then it's like you're a sheep. You're dependent on something else. And I don't mean that to be an offensive thing. I hopefully to say that to be a thing that motivates somebody. That like the goal is to be independent. The goal is to empower yourself. The goal is to educate yourself, to learn for you and for your people and for your team and for your family what is best, right? So I kind of make this a ramble show, but it's been something that's always been on my mind. And I was just talking about it a lot because I'm just really trying to figure out with like the future, right? Of like, even though I think it's so far away from my state of life that like, hey, I'm not going to really have to worry about college for, another 18 years at least. For kids, and I don't know, in 18 years, like where is all this stuff going, right? But I know the one thing that it's not changing, I know that for sure what's not changing is self-education. I know for the fact that like we have access to more education faster than we ever did before. Like the things that I'm doing on AI that I've done over the last 3 months of building things, I mean, it would have taken me so long. It would have taken me so long to get the right people to learn it. It would have taken me so much time to go through the learning process if I were to do it alone. Now it's like I have access to it like that. And it's like, if we have access to information that quick, what is going to be the need for certain things? And like certain jobs, like, I got two of my best friends are electricians, blue collar stuff, trade schools. I don't think that's going away. I think there's going to be a bigger need for that stuff as we grow into this kind of generation of life of where everything's going. But with some of the more white collar jobs, I'm like, is it worth somebody going into debt? Is it worth somebody even going through that route to get that education that maybe won't be applicable to life? And I'm like, I don't know. All right. So, but like I said, the main focus of this episode is like, doesn't matter what formal education is in your opinion of it, because like you're entitled to yours. And I also am not saying that college is a complete scam. I just think that formal education is really not done his best job to teach most people what's most important in life, right? Which is like, communication skills for me was always like a big thing, like philosophy on life, right? Economics, right? Like most people have no idea how to do taxes or how taxes work, right? Like we just become dependent on a system that was built out. And it's like, there's so much freedom in the unknown for most of us, right? And that unknown doesn't have to stay unknown. The unknown can become a reality for you if you choose to learn about it. Right. And it's like I've made it my life's mission and I would say more so during the pandemic, but over the course of my career, I was really just big on like, okay, I want to be really good at what I'm doing. So I want to learn it. But over the last 5 years, I just like, okay, I want to learn a lot of things, right? I want to learn the financial game, right? I want to learn how to create freedom for myself and my family. I want to learn how to become the best boss. I want to learn how to become the best husband. I want to learn how to become the best trainer. And I know the reality of trying to do a lot at once was not going to make me the best, but I can be really, really good at it. I can be great at it. I can also too just find enjoyment in the process of like learning as an art, right? Learning is flow state for me. Like when I'm learning or I'm doing certifications or workshops or anything that I've been doing with education, like it's kind of like a good disconnect for me. It's like I get into a flow state because it's like cool. I'm learning something new. When I talked about the burnout statement in the beginning, is I think a lot of people deal with burnout because they lose that sense of purpose, right? Like you don't run into burnout because of hours. Like, oh, I'm just working so much. It's like you will work more so than ever if you love it, right? I always love those, like there's like memes that go around. It's like the more entrepreneur meme, but it's like, people, I will never work a 9 to 5 and 40 hours a week for somebody else. I'd much rather work for myself and work 100 hours a week, right? Which is like the reality of it. It's like, it's true, right? Like you get into certain parts of your life where it's like, oh shit, you're like, I'm working way more now. But if I'm enjoying it, like I was just saying this in a couple quarterlies with my team. I do quarterlies with the coaches, and I was telling a couple coaches, I was like, all right, now I'm actually, as weird as it is, even though I'm not in person working as much as I normally am, or I'm working the same, but I'm working more than I ever have probably in the entire business on the back end. Right? Like I'm working more at home and on a computer than I ever have in the 9 years of functional lifestyles. And I've never been so motivated. Like I'm just like in a complete flow state when I get to go work at home because I'm working on things that are new. I'm learning things that are new. And I find it like, it's like my art. It's like I'm a builder at heart, right? So for me, it's like I need to build things. I need to keep working on things. And I have had a couple small periods of burnout in my life. And I've realized that every time I've gotten out of those like seasons that I'm like, really the burnout wasn't necessarily the work that I was doing. It was the work that I wasn't doing, right? It wasn't the things that like my day-to-day operations, right? It's like, yeah, there's times where it's like, fuck, like there's certain situations that happen with, a coach or a client or something in the business that I'm like, okay, this is super stressful. I don't want to do this anymore, blah, blah, blah. Like you give yourself that same conversation. But I realized that actually, like, I get happier when I'm actually in that building state, when I'm going through the trenches and I'm like, cool, I'm learning something new. And this is why I've always said that I don't really believe for me that I really want to be someone that's fully retired. Like, I want to be working on something. And maybe retirement doesn't necessarily mean that I'm going to an office every day. Maybe I'm going every week, or maybe I'm doing something completely at home, or maybe I'm just building. Like, it doesn't even necessarily need to be monetary, but like, I need to stay busy. I want to stay busy. I want to keep learning, because I think that's the thing that keeps us sharp between the ears. And I always remember this, but my granny, she lives in like a senior home in Monterey, and surprisingly, I always feel like she's just like in phenomenal health. Like when my mom always says, like, I don't think she's ever gonna die. She's like superhuman, and whatever. She's late 80s now, something like that. But one of her roommates, whatever you want to call it, like building mates, she was, and this is years ago. This is almost probably 8 years ago now, 10 years ago since I was there. So, hopefully she's still alive, but she was like in her early 90s. Talked better than me, like just good conversation, great personality. And the first thing I asked her is like, what do you do? Like, what do you do to like stay as sharp as you are, right? What I mean by sharp, like she just like, some people, you just see the degradation that happens over time, right? Their health, degrades, their mental degrades, their social skills are not there, their ability to speak. And she was there, right? And she was like, every day I work out. I do something. It doesn't matter if I go on a walk around the neighborhood or if I go do like walk up the stairs. And then she goes, I read every day, right? I do like a puzzle every day, right? And I was like, and it's always just stuck with me because I never forgot about that. That I was just like, if you do something every day, and it doesn't need to be a lot, microdose it, right? The microdosing is the win, right? It's like do a little bit of movement every day, right? Do a little bit of mental training every day. Do a little bit of emotional training or intellectual stuff. Like do things that keep you sharp where you want to be sharp. And that's coming from the basis of the forever student, that she doesn't go, well, like, okay, well, I know enough. I don't need to read anymore. Or like I've seen every damn book, because I will tell you, like for me, there's a lot of things that I now do in my space with fitness and I'm like, okay, this is kind of repetitive. I heard this before. But it's good, because the thing that we all forget is we need to be reminded more than we need to be taught. Right. And a lot of the education that we go through and the ROI from it is in the reminder of the data, right? Is in the reminder of the work that you need to do. It's not so much of, oh, this is the new shiny thing. This is the new thing that's going to make this work. When I was at that workshop a couple weeks ago, I was just once again reminded to myself that I'm like, fuck, like I've heard this stuff. 80 to 90% of that workshop that I paid $5,000 for to fly somewhere else, to take time away from my work, was something that I knew. But what it was good for me was me investing into myself makes me take my work more serious, because if I don't spend the money on it, it's just very easy for me to just naturally, unconsciously take it less serious. But when I invest money into it, I practice what I preach, because I tell my team and I tell you guys that you should be investing in yourself when it comes to this stuff. But B, the reminder is the stuff that I'm like, okay, I'm over here looking for something new, and I just need to do more of what I already know I need to do. That's great. That's education, right? That's indirectly going to be a form of education for us. So don't always view education as this non-fictional, the tactical information that I can go and apply. Read it and understand it, that everything that you learn, however you're taking your information in, is going to be repetitive, and that's okay, right? Because that repetitive information is the reminder for the application that you need to be doing, because what makes things go full circle is the execution behind it. And if you can continually just execute on all the work that you need to be doing all the time, you're going to continue to keep moving forward, right? It's the consistency of your workouts. It's the consistency of your work. It's the consistency of showing up at home. And in the beginning, it requires a lot of education. And as time goes on, it'll always require of education, but it's just require a little bit less. It's going to require more accountability. It's going to require more discipline and consistency to stay where you're at, and more importantly, keep growing from where you are. And that is a great reminder that we can all use all the time, right? All right, guys. Well, that's my rambling episode of self-education, my opinion of formal education, maybe where things are going with education today, and I have no idea. So drop a comment if you think it's going anywhere else. But I'll see you guys next week. Take care.